Have you ever heard of a ghost flight? Oh, I'm not talking about those budget airlines that leave you stranded. I'm talking about a real, honest-to-goodness phantom signal from a plane that vanished nearly half a century ago. This story will send a shiver down your spine, so buckle up. It all started on a seemingly ordinary day at a remote air traffic control station. Out of the static, a voice crackled to life on the emergency frequency. The transmission was weak, laced with interference, but the message was chillingly clear. "Mayday, Mayday," a panicked voice said. "We need to land. We see land." Standard procedure kicked in. The controller immediately tried to establish communication, asking for the aircraft's call sign and position. That's when things got strange. The call sign that came back through the static wasn't from any active flight. It was from a small passenger plane that had disappeared without a trace 45 years ago. Back in 1979. Imagine the scene in that control room. Disbelief, confusion, maybe even a little bit of fear. Could this be a prank? A very elaborate, very cruel joke? The controller checked the registry, then checked it again. The code was a perfect match. It belonged to a flight that had taken off on a clear day, headed for a small island, and simply vanished from radar screens. No wreckage was ever found. No black box. Just gone. The official report concluded it was likely a catastrophic failure mid-flight, and the plane and all its passengers were lost to the deep ocean. The case was closed. A tragic footnote in aviation history. It'll now. The immediate priority was to locate the source of this impossible signal. Every radar system was scanned. The controller swept a 200-mile radius, then expanded it to 400 miles. Nothing. The skies were empty. There was no blip, no transponder signal, no sign of any aircraft in the area where the voice claimed to be. Yet the voice was still there, repeating its desperate plea. "We see land. We need to land now." The controller kept trying to get a lock, asking for more details. "What are your coordinates? What is your altitude?" But the only reply was that same haunting phrase, over and over. The team knew they were dealing with something beyond their training manuals. They brought in a team of specialists, including audio analysts, to dissect the transmission. The signal itself was a mess, full of noise and static. Their first task was to clean it up, to isolate the pilot's voice from the background interference. As they filtered out the electronic crackle, something else emerged. It was a low, persistent howling sound. At first they thought it was just atmospheric noise, but a closer analysis revealed it was the sound of wind. Very strong wind. This is where the story takes another turn into the bizarre. The meteorologists on the team checked the current weather conditions for the entire region. The winds were calm. There were no storms, no unusual jet streams, nothing that could account for the ferocious gale they were hearing on the recording. It just didn't make sense. One of the younger analysts had a wild idea. What if the wind they were hearing wasn't from today? What if it was from 1979? It sounded crazy, but they had to explore every possibility. They pulled the archived meteorological data for the exact day the plane disappeared 45 years ago. The records showed a sudden, unforecasted, and extremely violent storm had developed right along the plane's flight path.
Wow.
The wind speeds recorded on that day were almost an exact match for the wind patterns. Detected in the background of the mysterious radio signal, it was as if they were listening to a direct audio feed from the cockpit of the doomed flight, a soundscape frozen in time. The implications were staggering. Was this a time slip? A tear in the fabric of space-time, allowing a message from the past to bleed through into the present. The team was grappling with concepts that belonged more in science fiction than in an air traffic control center. The rational, scientific part of their brains was screaming that this was impossible. But the evidence was right there in their headphones. The voice, the call sign, the wind. It all pointed to one unbelievable conclusion. And then, just as suddenly as it began, the signal stopped. The transmission cut out mid-sentence. The silence that followed was deafening. The team looked at the clock. The entire event, from the first Mayday to the final crackle of static, had lasted for exactly 2 minutes. One of the senior investigators, a man who had been with the agency for decades, went pale. They pulled up the original incident report from 1979. In the log, it was noted that the final garbled transmission received from the flight before it disappeared had also lasted for precisely 2 minutes. The symmetry was too perfect to be a coincidence. It was another piece of a puzzle that was becoming more and more terrifying. The story could have ended there as an inexplicable anomaly, a ghost story, to be whispered among air traffic controllers for generations. But there was one final, heart-wrenching twist. The lead investigator for this new, bizarre case was a man whose career had been deeply influenced by the 1979 disappearance. It was a case he knew intimately, one he had studied since he was a young cadet. He listened to the cleaned-up audio of the pilot's voice over and over again. It was something about the cadence, the tone, a subtle inflection that he found deeply familiar. It felt a cold dread creep over him as he pulled up the original scratchy audio recording from the 1979 incident file. He played it, then played the new recording. Back and forth, comparing the two. The voice was older in the original, more panicked, but it was undeniably the same person. The investigator leaned back in his chair, his face ashen. He knew that voice better than anyone. He'd heard it on old family home videos, in fading photographs, and in his dreams for the past 45 years. The pilot of the ghost flight, the man calling out from across time, was his father. He was just a boy when his dad's plane went missing. Now, decades later, he was the one receiving his father's final, impossible message. He was listening to the last 2 minutes of his father's life, broadcast across an impossible gulf of time. The message wasn't just a random anomaly. For him, it was a final, ghostly goodbye. What do you think happened? Was it a message from the past, a glitch in time, or something else entirely? The official file remains open. It's labeled simply as Unexplained Phenomenon. This story really makes you wonder about the mysteries that lie just beyond our understanding. If you've ever heard a story like this, or have your own theories, I'd love to read them in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and if you enjoy exploring the unknown, make sure to like this video and subscribe for more. I'll see you in the next one.